Hey guys, if you like Vikings, you're gonna absolutely love this video. So stay tuned. This is on a martial art called Glima, the ancient warrior system of Vikings.
Pow pow, inside fighting, yeah, dangerous martial arts. Pow pow, ooh ah.
All right, so I found this martial art by accident, and the story is very interesting. I wanted to do a video on a style called Grima, which is kind of like based off Eskrima, I guess, and it's a Colombian machete fighting style. It looks very, very cool, and I am going to eventually do a video on this. But what happened was I typed this into the search bar, and lo and behold, I accidentally typed Glima. I don't know why I typed Glima. I never heard of Glima, the Viking martial art. But it turned out the thing that came up was Viking martial art, and I was like, oh, I thought I was looking up Colombian machete fighting. Anyway, it turns out that this system of Glima is a very, very, very cool martial art. And I say this as a grappler because it seems like Glima is essentially a folk wrestling system. So I'm going to jump right into it, and I'm going to give all the positives and negatives like I always do, and what I really like about this martial art, because it's very random and very, very cool. So let's first look at the history of the martial art. As far as I could tell, there's scrolls and pictures and stuff that go back all the way to the 1300s. The Vikings were a warrior class of people, and they were badass. And so Glima means, from what I gathered, quick or flash. And the whole system is based around developing very quick, aggressive fighting instincts. And so it wasn't necessarily, in my perspective back then, the system that they used exclusively for fighting because they were heavily weapon-based. But it was a system that they used among their warriors, among their fighters, to develop very good instincts for fighting. And I've always loved grappling for that in general. I always say this, I think grappling develops a very, very good instinct for fighting. It teaches you kind of how to have sensitivity with other people, kind of their kinetic energy. It teaches you how to use your body very efficiently, how to cover distance. There's just a ton of benefits for it if you're going to go into any other system. I even noticed that wrestlers can make excellent strikers because what they can do is cover distance so quickly and manage distance so well that when they do go into striking, they develop extremely explosive punches, and they manage to also land their punches at ranges that people wouldn't expect because of how fast they can drive in on people. So jumping into this, the form of Glima in Iceland that seems to have became popular in the 1800s. And it's trouser wrestling. They put on this kind of lederhosen. I don't know what to call it. They put on this weird trouser thing where they can grip you by the hips. And they start off in a neutral position where they grab, and it's like an overhook, underhook position, but with this grip on the trousers, this belt thing around the waist. And they do a series of formal steps, and then they go for a throw. And I'm a huge fan of folk wrestling. I love these old style wrestlings that are different. You know, as someone who's done grappling again their whole life, I like to believe, I don't actually like to believe, but I do sometimes feel like I've seen it all. Like I'm not going to see a move that completely, or a style that completely changes the way I view wrestling. So whenever something comes up that's very different than what I would see in American freestyle or Brazilian jiu-jitsu or judo or sambo, whenever there's something outside of that realm, catch wrestling, that just feels different, I really like it. Things like sumo, things like Glima. Those are interesting things to me because of the rule set. Even Shuai Jiao, I found very, very unique. So I love finding these systems that are different. Kind of reignites my love for grappling. And after 25 years, it's a nice feeling to get that. And when I saw Glima, I did that. This trouser wrestling, this kind of grip approach is very, very unique. Now, what I will say about that is Glima has clearly, since then, evolved well past that. And the first time I believe that trouser wrestling form of fighting started was in the 1800s. So prior to that and since then, they've developed what I would call multifaceted forms of freestyle wrestling and even combat wrestling. Now, I'm sure there's influences from modern day martial arts now in it, but what I do see consistently in Glima is the notion that fighting should be fast. And this is what I love about it. And this is, again, Brazilian jiu-jitsu can sometimes get slow. Certain grappling styles, you know, they can kind of slow down and then the pin happens and this happens. In Glima, the notion is the second you lock hands, the fight goes and it goes 100%. And I think that's a great way to translate your striking or your grappling into a striking or into a self-defense system. because you can't just sit there and kind of play this, I'm going to grip your hands game and get punched in the face. That's just not how it works. And a lot of the time, grapplers become too comfortable with the notion of not getting hit. So any system that incorporates that is very, very unique to me. Now, the trouser system doesn't have that. What the trouser system really does teach you is from an over-under position with a grip on the belt. And something I will say here from a self-defense standpoint, you're fighting people with pants on. Chances are you're not fighting naked people running down the street. So I don't mind this grip on the belt, because if someone's wearing jeans, if someone's wearing a belt, if someone even shorts, you're still going to be able to kind of use that to manipulate people. And it's something that's really not acknowledged very often. I will say this about gi systems. Gi systems are far more reliable on a jacket. It's much harder in a t-shirt or even a long sleeve shirt to pull off a lot of throws that are gi based. But here, everyone wears pants. Not everyone's going to wear a jacket. And so I do like this idea of an over-under position, which is kind of a neutral position that stops you from getting hit from a self-defense point of view, where you're really tight and close to the person, where you do learn to kind of hip load them up into the air and launch them onto the ground. I mean, that's enough to end a fight on concrete. So there is a self-defense component here that I do think is effective, even in this kind of traditional Icelandic folk wrestling style, which is the trouser form of a Glima. Now, what I will say is the other systems are just straight up folk wrestling, full on, let's touch hands and go for it. I did see systems that incorporated smacks to the head, some with punches, and I even have read that they incorporate weapons sometimes into their grappling. So I think that's very, very, very cool. I do think it's nice to see that there's a system that seems to be rooted in older style, kind of warrior-based martial arts. You know, a lot of the time you'll look at a martial arts system and it's a modern day recreation. This does seem to have a lineage and a history to it, which I like also. It's not like some guy who's coming out and saying, hey, the ancient, Israelites, the Maccabees used to fight with this system and now I've recreated it. And, that kind of stuff doesn't interest me. That's essentially usually just a recreation. That's a modern day iteration of something that used to exist. Here, there's a lot of evidence to support that people have been folk wrestling in these areas for centuries, and that this has actually been passed down family to family to family, and there is a really tight community around it. And I think that's how true martial arts with all this kind of culture and history do survive. So here's kind of the positives. Self-defense point of view. Any grappling system that focuses on explosiveness and quick motions to get in and take people down, that is willing to step outside of itself and also say, we're going to allow striking, we're going to allow weapons, we're going to, whatever rule set feels right in the moment. They seem very open to that. I'm going to give that a 10 on 10 S-class for a grappling system, because it shows that you have an open mind. You're not looking at your system like it's the end all of everything, and you're willing to experiment and go out there and kind of put it on the line. Again, for history here, I love that Glima actually does have the culture I just spoke about. It seems to really have a lineage. So again, I think that's super, super cool. I would say the thing about the trouser wrestling is it is a traditional martial art. Once you do that, it's very specific. And so I do think that that loses a little bit of the effectiveness that you would find in the more combat Glima styles that are out there. But I do think even that has a unique value and kind of makes it more of a game and something more traditional. And I always talk about how in martial arts, I personally don't only train martial arts for self-defense. I might take a martial art because I enjoy the culture behind it and I enjoy the weird rule sets. The same way that boxing doesn't make sense because you can't kick, you can't clinch, you can't take the person down. Every martial art has its area where it fits in. And if you look at the trouser wrestling, it's really focusing in on that over-under position where you grip the pants, and that's where the fight happens. And as an isolated system to focus on that, I think it's great, because I think a lot of people, even grappling systems, don't focus on that grip, that pants grip. And it's a very strong position. So this video is kind of short just because I'm going to show a bunch of clips on how cool Glima is. When it comes to wrestling systems and grappling systems, there's not much to say that's going to be so outside the box that it's like, oh man, I could talk about this for hours. But again, what I will say is there are aspects of this that are very unique. Again, the explosiveness. I love that Glima actually stands for flash or quick. I think that's what it actually stands for. And I think that's, again, the persistent thing I've noticed in how people train in this system. I do think that there's a disparity in terms of the fighters in a system like Glima to what you would find in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Judo, or American freestyle wrestling. Again, because the talent pool, and I always say this, martial arts that are heavily popularized, that have a big following, are going to have better quality of competitors. And so you take a system that has been passed down generation to generation to generation within families, that even within a country is popular but does not have worldwide popularity. It's not going to have the same kind of development and intricacies and also level of competition that you find in something like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, where people are like hyper obsessive about it and it's like a chess match. People write books on it every day. You got guys like John Danaher, who has 45-hour philosophy discussions about it. And it's just permeated society in a way that everyone understands what it is and people are fascinated by it, and therefore you develop a lot of high-level competition. That doesn't take anything away from the system, because I think the root system is there, and I think folk systems of wrestling always have certain unique moves that are just a little bit different than what you find in mainstream wrestling. So, very cool martial art. The Vikings were badass. Oh, my allergies are killing me. So, final notes. Overall, very cool system. If you're lucky enough to... So, overall, very cool system. If you're lucky enough to... I can't talk. My God, I've got bad allergies. So overall, very cool system. If you're lucky enough to be around someone who trains it, or you're traveling, definitely check it out. Do a video on it. This video is short, but I just wanted to introduce people to the system because I found it by accident and I was super amazed by it and I thought it was a very cool find. So hopefully you enjoyed. Like and subscribe. Sorry that I'm sniffling. My allergies are out of control. And I'll keep you posted. The next one I'll probably do Glima, which will be random because I'll go from Glima to Glima. And I found the connection between Eskrima and Glima. And anyway, we'll get into that on the next one. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe. Share the video. I would very much appreciate it.